Are at the Atlantic Ocean, and today is December 2nd, '08. I think this may be the year for the Electoral College, which has been humming along quietly forever and ever, 230 years, to suddenly get rather noisy. The Constitution contains 4 statements about the electing of a president. One is that it will occur by the votes of a handful of people called the electors. You may think you went to the polls on November 6th to vote for president, but you are not the voters. You sort of voted for the names of electors, even though you didn't know their names, and on December 15th they will have a meeting and they will elect a president. So point 1 is that it's done by a handful of people. Point 2 is that each state legislature has the right to decide how those handful of people will be chosen in their state, and they may decide that the governor's best friends can go, or they may decide that the first 6 names in the phone book are the ones. Of course, that's not ever how they do it. They always do it by party. It must be that the national level of the 2 major parties got in on the game very early and made sure that each state legislated that the way of choosing electors would be really chosen by the 2 major parties. I'm sure the idea there is to make sure that the dear old third parties never have a chance. But that was an aside. The second point that the Constitution makes is that Congress may appoint a day each year for the meeting, every 4 years, and that meeting this year is December 15th. So every elector's group in his own state, there's no electoral college they meet in Mississippi somewhere, no, it's per state. And when they go there, each of say Massachusetts is 12, Kansas is 6, every state has a different number, California has a huge number, 55, and they each cast 1 ballot per person, and that becomes the way to vote for the president. Then they mail those in. So point 3 is they mail them in to remember the Constitution was written when we didn't exactly have fast-moving mechanized vehicles. So they mail it to the President of the Senate. And who is that? Well, it's Dick Cheney, because the Vice President is always the President of the Senate. And on January 6th, he will open the envelopes. I don't ever recall seeing in the 60 divided by 4. In the 15 elections that took place in my life, I wouldn't have remembered the one when I was 2, I suppose. That was Truman. You don't recall that TV makes much of a deal of it. I think certain people want it all to be very quiet and not the subject of discussion, because it's so interesting that if you knew about it, you would be thinking, what could you do to make best use of these electors' votes? And remarkably, they have not been bribed, or perhaps even bribable in the past. Of the 21,000 ballots cast over all those years for presidents, only 9, I think a 10th one occurred recently in the Bush 2004 election. She was a member of the Washington, D.C. group who simply left her vote blank as a protest of something unrelated to the presidency, and the other 9 switched their vote at the last minute in a fairly unexpected way, and not apparently a bribed way. I shouldn't be talking about bribes here, putting thoughts into someone's head. Anyway, there were to have been 4 ideas. One is that it would elect him by just the electors. 2 is they have a meeting that their states can choose how to do it. 3, that they meet, and that's January 15th. And 4th is the final day, January 6th, when the opening of the envelopes occur. And on that day, if any one of the candidates has attained the necessary majority vote, and since there are 538 electors in this country, divide that by 2 is 269, put together majority need just 1 more than half, you need 270. And if someone has the 270 that day, he becomes the president-elect on January 6th and the president on January 20th. So a man or woman can only be a president-elect for 2 weeks. We do not today on December 2nd, despite what you may have seen in the newspaper, we do not have a president-elect. Obama is not yet that far. And I want to tell you that when the ballots are open, if no one has the 270, then the House of Representatives becomes the voting block, but only 1 per state. So the 12 Massachusetts members, actually 2 are senators and they don't vote. The 10 in the House can only cast 1 Massachusetts vote, and so forth, for each of the states to determine who shall be president, and those House of Reps can only choose the top 3 names that came in those envelopes. But earlier than that, on December 15th, when the electors were meeting, they were not limited to famous names that have been in the campaigns. They're not limited to Hillary Clinton, McCain, people that were already running. They can bring up a name that you never heard of. Very Maxwell, for example. Or they could bring up someone who dropped out of the race. As you may know, Giuliani dropped out of Republicans, and Dennis Kucinich and John Edwards dropped out of Democrats, so those names may come up again. The idea would be for Democrats to be sure to get 270 votes on that day, January 15th, because they're facing the unknown if no one gets the 270. So for the moment, all I'll say is await for surprises.